Hey, 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 come on in, come on in, come on in. It's Tuesday. The time is now 8 p.m. Central on a Tuesday. So, that means it is once again time for Tea Talk Tuesday. I am T. Carter, the creator and founder of Tea Talk Tuesday. And we are here with a word of edification, a word of encouragement, a word of empowerment. Thank you so much for taking the time, whether you're here in person or watching the replay. Just come in and see what the Lord downloaded into my spirit. And I am so excited because today I'm going to kick off a new series. We've been in Exodus, but it's time for us to pivot. And so we're going to title this series The Pivot: Lessons from People Who Had to Shift. The reality that is that transition often begins not with a breakdown, but with divine disruption. And today we'll talk about Genesis 12, when God asked Abraham to walk away from everything he built, everything he knew, and everything that made him comfortable. Not because it was broken, but because it was too small and it didn't have the capacity to hold what God had next. And so I believe this message is for anyone who has built something that feels stable, but despite that, they're restless in their spirit. Anyone who's being nudged to move, but fears leaving the familiar. Anyone who's wondering if the cost of obedience is just too much to pay, and anyone who needs clarity on how to pivot without crumbling, without falling apart. And we just need to recognize that the first thing when it's time for us to pivot is we'll have a nudge. And sometimes it's small, but peace just doesn't feel like home anymore. Abraham had settled and succeeded in Haran, but God stirred him to move forward. The truth is, not every pivot comes with a crisis. Some shifts come through conviction. God will often make the familiar uncomfortable when he's calling you to move into the unknown. So my question is, what have you been trying to make permanent that God only meant to be temporary? Pivoting also requires us to release what feels safe. God didn't give Abraham a full blueprint. He said, go to the land that I will show you. And partial instructions do have the ability to test your trust. My question for you: are you able to move on a maybe? Leaving what you built doesn't dishonor it, but it honors your capacity to grow. Because sometimes the thing that once validated your obedience is now a barrier to your evolution. So, what habits, what systems, what mindsets have we outgrown, but we're afraid to let go of? Either because it's unknown, we don't know what people will say, how they will respond. But I would rather trust God and move forward on a word from the Lord than stand still in order to make other people comfortable. We also know that trusting that purpose will travel with you. We have to know and trust that our purpose will travel with us. The reality is that Abraham's identity didn't stay behind. Even though he was known in Haran and he was comfortable in Haran, his identity went with him and it traveled with him. Because the truth is, our promise isn't tied to a place, our promise is tied to our obedience. And just like the Lord said to Abraham, he said, I will make you a great nation and I will bless you, not if you stay, but as you go. I believe that leaving doesn't always mean losing. Sometimes it means unlocking. And so, what is God asking us to walk away from so that He can position us for something greater? The truth is, you don't need to have all the answers to move. You just have to make a decision. God just needs your yes. And even though Abraham didn't know the destination, he trusted the voice of the Lord. And so I want to encourage you today. If you're feeling restless, if you feel like, hey, I'm uneasy, and it seems like everyone else is comfortable in this place, but there's something that I just can't explain, that this thing is no longer comfortable. This environment is no longer conducive. This is not the place where I'm going to grow. And I can't explain it to anybody. I may not even have the words to articulate what I'm feeling, but I know what I know. I want to encourage you that you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't even need to have a full blueprint. You just need to have a yes. And when you don't know the destination, know the creator and trust his voice, because shifts don't always come with clarity. Sometimes they start with courage. It's the courage for me to say yes, the courage for me to go on a word, the courage for me to say, God, I trust you and I believe you. And so I'm just going to do what you told me to do. Just like Abraham, the Lord said to Abram, because he wasn't even Abraham yet, he was Abram, because he had not stepped into his full identity. And so, in order for me to step into everything that God has purposed and predestined for me, I have to go leave the place where they know me as one thing so I can become who I was created to be. I want to encourage you to just read Genesis 12, because the truth is, sometimes what's standing between where we are is what we built. Where we are and where God is calling us to is what we built. And sometimes we're dreamers and we're leaders and we're builders, and we did so much, and I put so much oil and I did all of these things to build this thing. And the truth is that Abraham wasn't in bondage in Haram. He was in a place of comfort. He was in a place of success, but yet God told him to leave it. And sometimes the hardest transitions happen not when things are falling apart, but when they're functioning. And so sometimes what happens is we confuse stability with destiny. Sometimes I'm staying out of loyalty to the past, but I'm forfeiting what's possible in my future. I want to encourage you not to let comfort keep you where God is calling you out of, because there is clarity coming if you just go ahead and leave behind what you built. See, sometimes the things that were only meant for scaffolding, wasn't for to be forever. This was the scaffolding. This is what, as architects, we use this as a placeholder until I'm going to build what's permanent. But we get so comfortable in that place. But God, even now, faith doesn't always come with the full picture. I just want to encourage you right there that faith doesn't always come with the full picture. God didn't give Abraham coordinates, he gave him a call. Sometimes all you have is a call. And we want to know the full picture, but God didn't give Abraham coordinates. He gave him a call, because the transition requires movement before we see the full instruction. And this is where many people get stuck. They say, I'll move when I know more. But the promise of God requires obedience first and revelation second. Are you asking God for a blueprint when what he's actually asking you for is to trust him? Sometimes I believe God leaves out the details because he's developing our dependence on him. Because if God gave you the full plan, would I lean on the strategy instead of the surrender? Whew. Where is God asking me for movement and not more information? Because the truth is, the promise isn't behind you, the promise is in front of you. God didn't just call Abram away, he called him into more. The promise was forward focused. When God says leave, he's not subtracting, he's positioning. Abraham wasn't being punished, he was being promoted. And so I want to encourage you, the fear of leaving is also rooted in what we think we're losing. But God doesn't call you out to leave you empty. He transitions you to make room for legacy. And so I just want to encourage you that when you obey, you don't lose identity, you unlock increase. What greater could be waiting on the other side of your willingness to shift, your willingness to pivot? Just want to remind you that you don't need a map, you just need a yes. Abraham didn't know where he was going, but he trusted who he was following. The first pivot is foundational. It teaches us obedience over comfort, surrender over certainty, and vision over validation. And you may not have all the answers. You may be afraid. But if God is calling you to pivot, transition, or release, he's not calling you away to leave you empty. He's calling you to become. And so I just want to say, like, it's time to shift. If you're willing to walk away from what you built for yourself in order to walk into what God has designed for you, this is a season. This is a time for us to pivot. This is a time for us to do the things that may not be comfortable, to do the things that we didn't anticipate. God is calling us to shift on a word. Just like when Peter was on a boat, he said, "Hey, I've tried this. I've done this all night. I've been toiling. I've been working. I do everything I know how to do. But nevertheless, that word, even though this doesn't make sense, even though I think I know how this is going to turn out, at your word, because I hear you calling me. At your word, I'm going to let down my net. I'm going to try again. I'm going to pivot. Because if you read the story of if you read the story, they were washing their nets. They had given up. They had said, hey, I tried it. I did the best that I can do. I gave it my best. I've been out here toiling all night. And now you came at the point where I gave up, at the point where I was washing it away, at the point where my actions were in a different situation. I had turned my head and I had turned my heart to do something else, but I heard God calling me out. But here's the thing, when I let down my net into the deep, see, I don't have a plan B in this season. God, I hear you calling me to shift. I hear you calling me to pivot. And everybody may not understand. And people may talk about me, but they won't talk to me. So if I hear you calling me to shift, God, I'm going to follow the instruction of the Lord. I know 2 years ago, I thought that this was going to be the way. I thought that this was going to be permanent. I thought this was the will of God. And it may have been for that time, but that was temporary. And it's time for me to transition. And if you got a problem with what God is calling me to do, I encourage you to talk to God, because the truth is I didn't want to do any of this anyway. The truth is I was comfortable. The truth is I was in a place where I was complacent and I could have lived my life out there. But I heard the word of the Lord and it was calling me out. And I just had the courage to answer the call. I had the courage to leave it behind. And yes, I built it. And yes, I toiled for it. And yes, I put my heart into it. And yes, I wanted to see it grow. But I understood that I had to make a decision that either I was going to watch it grow or I was going to grow. So I made a decision to leave it behind. And I made a decision to pivot. And I want to encourage you today to pivot, because your promise is forward focused. God isn't subtracting, he's positioning you. He's not punishing you, he's promoting you. And even though you may be afraid, answer the call anyway. Even though you don't know how it's going to turn out, answer the call anyway. You may not have all of the answers, but answer the call anyway. I'm going to trust in who I'm following. I'm going to trust that God wouldn't bring me out to make a fool out of me. I'm going to trust that this thing is going to turn. I'm going to trust that this thing that is going to pivot, that this thing is going to shift, that there is a call of God that has been spoken over my life. There is a promise that has been declared, and I'm not leaving without it. And the reality is that if I can obtain the promise, the full promise of God in this place, he wouldn't have called me out. And so as I'm going to walk out of this place, yes, I'm walking away from what I built, but I'm walking into what God has designed. And so I encourage you to pivot. And so that's your encouragement for this Tuesday. If you believe this word will be an encouragement for anyone else, I would so greatly appreciate it if you would like, comment, and share. If you shifted with me, just go ahead and drop a comment and let me know. I'm ready to shift. We're going to continue this series next week, The Pivot, Lessons from People Who Had to Learn to Shift. And so until next week, I do want to encourage you now unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all you can act, think, or imagine, according to the power that works in you. So let the power of God work in you and let God do what only he can do through you. I love y'all. Y'all go have a great rest of your Tuesday or whatever day you may be watching this. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place.
When the week begins to dim its glow, and Tuesday's here to steal the show, we gather around with hearts so free. A Tea Talk Tuesday, you and me. Let's edify, let's lift and share. Encouragement fills the air. Empowered voices, bright and true, on Tea Talk Tuesday, just for you. With everyone